Good morning, everybody. I hope you slept well last night and are good and fresh this morning. We've got a lot of work to do today, and I'm looking in the audience for Chairman Neal. Is Chairman J. Neal here yet? There he is. Bless your heart. Mr. Chairman, would you say an invocation for us this morning, please, sir?
Absolutely. Father, we thank you today for the opportunity we have once again to bow our hearts before you. We thank you, Lord, for the good night's rest you've given us and a cheerful heart as we begin the day early this morning. We just pray for your wisdom and guidance. We're making some very difficult decisions, not only today but in the days and the weeks to come. And we just pray that you would give us wisdom and guidance and discernment that we might do what is best for all Georgians, and we give you the praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know why it is that 8 o'clock seems so early in Atlanta. It don't seem that early at the feed store, but it does up here. We've got one item of business before us this morning we need to take care of before we take up the amended budget, and that is adoption of the committee rules. There's a copy of those laying on the desk in front of you. No changes from previous years, and when someone is comfortable with it, have a motion second. All in favor, let me know by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All righty. I'm going to turn the chair over to our Secretary Collins.
Good morning, everyone. At this time, Mr. Chairman, whenever you're ready to present the 2011 amended budget.
Tracking documents are being handed out right now, so I'll give everybody just a second to get those on their desk.
If you end up not getting one, just motion to the chair and we'll make sure you have one.
Does everybody have a tracking document now?
If you don't have a tracking document, just raise your hand right quick.
Okay.
All right, I think they're out. Sure, Mr. Chairman.
Well, good morning again. As we begin going through this process this morning, I want to thank a few people first. I want to thank our vice chairs for their hard work and their subcommittee's hard work. Chairman Houston on Human Resources, Chairman Dixon on K-12 Education, Chairman Powell on Public Safety, Chairman Reinders on General Government, Chairman Parrish on Health, Chairman Earhart on Higher Ed, Chairman Rogers on Economic Development, and Chairman Hill on Zero-Based Budgeting. And I would like to mention Chairman Earhart is not here with us this morning. His mother fell ill the day before yesterday, and so they're with her right now, making sure that everything's going to be okay. They think she may have had a stroke, so just keep her and Earl and all their family in your prayers if you don't mind. But again, thank you to the subcommittees and all their work. But I would be remiss if I didn't also thank the House Budget Office and the analysts there, and that's John Brown, Martha Wigdon, Margie Coggins, Christine Murdoch, Chase Jones, Scott Blunt, Jeremy Dickerson, Tracy Atchison, Kendra Mitchell, and Sarah Oliver. And they're playing backup roles for us here this morning, and I appreciate that. They've done yeoman's work in helping us get everything pulled together. House Bill 77, otherwise known as the amended fiscal year 2011 budget, is a sound spending plan for our state. I want to outline a few items before I begin the full presentation. This amended budget totals $18,052,709,014, or a net increase of $163.3 million. However, the increase comes from $152.2 million added from the 1% revenue shortfall reserve fund for the education midterm and $31.1 million in lottery funds that were added to meet actual expenses for the Hope Scholarship Program. Without the 1% of education funds and the increase in lottery funds, the FY 2000 budget would actually show a net decline of approximately $20 million. The fiscal year 2011 amended budget includes several additions totaling almost $400 million. To pay for these additions, state agencies have been cut an average of 4% to a total of a little over $300 million. While state agencies have been preparing for these reductions since the beginning of the fiscal year, Governor Perdue had ordered a 4% withholding on allotments at that time. The cuts will have a significant impact on services. Among those items included for increased funding, $148 million to replace ARA funds as Congress changed the federal match originally anticipated for the FMAP program, which funds Medicaid, behavioral health, and human services. $83 million to provide increased K-12 enrollment for the midterm adjustment. $56.5 million with a total of over $85 million to the state health benefit plan to provide coverage and meet projected expenses for teachers and state employees. $12 million to provide differentiated pay for newly certified math and science teachers. $13.4 million to fund behavioral health needs, the community-based beds and services as part of our agreement with the Justice Department to address concerns within our mental health delivery systems. $8.6 million to fund the required actuarial contributions to the Georgia Military Pension Plan and PSERS, which covers our bus drivers and lunchroom personnel. $5.8 million for the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority to keep the commuter buses running. $10 million, down from the governor's recommended $19.8 million for One Georgia Authority to provide for economic development needs, and we'll go into that a little bit further here in a little bit. $31 million to meet the actual need of the Hope Scholarship Program. The House version of HB 77 retains the above recommended by the governor and seeks to make two primary improvements, including adding $14 million to the governor's $7.7 million recommendation to fully fund the disproportionate share hospitals, or DSH hospitals. The House also added $5.4 million to the governor's $11 million recommendation to fully fund the actuarial requirements for tax officials' retirement and to protect the state's AAA bond rating. While the fiscal year 2011 amended budget is austere, other than revising 3 or 4 large items, restoring a few of the more sensitive cuts, including Meals on Wheels and the hemophilia factor, making a couple of corrections based on later information, and a few tweaks here and there, House subcommittees made very few changes to the forthright budget proposed by Governor Deal. And now I'd like to walk you through your tracking document and help you understand some of the changes that were made by the House the subcommittees on appropriations. To start out with, there are 3 major areas that you'll see repeated numerous times through the document. I'm going to cover those at the beginning right here so we don't cover them each time we come to them. One of those is the increased share for the employer share for the state health benefit plan for the employees. And that was $56,468,639 that is taken from that 1% midterm adjustment. Teachers are by far the largest group, and this will take and appear over 80 times in the budget document as we go through it. But it translates to a total pull down of a gathering of funds of almost $80 million by the time we spread it through the agencies. Became a lot more efficient to do that than it was to put it in one lump sum. You'll see reflections on telecommunications expenses throughout the document. It appears 10 to 15 times, and it's just truing up with what the agency's actual expenses were. And also you'll see adjustments for workman's compensation premium throughout the documents 10 to 15 times. Both of those were done with the help of OPB, just trying to take later information that we've had and make sure those items true up completely. Now, starting in your tracking document on page 7, on section 3, you'll see Georgia General Assembly joint offices, ancillary activities, And this is money that Robin Underwood has requested to help get through the beginning of the reapportionment process, $500,000 there. That takes care of local and state redistricting activities plus some legal fees. We will have to pay some of those expenses before we get to the change of the fiscal year, so we went ahead and put some of those in. Now on page 8, section 4, Department of Audits and Accounts. They did not submit a 4% cut plan at the beginning because they were not exactly sure of what they would need to do. So you'll see that we've gone through and made some of these cuts in the House version. And you'll see that there is an add on 4.1.3 recognizing other funds from DCA for regional commissions of $90,000. And then you'll see on 414 a $656,000 cut, and that represents 6 to 8 vacancies that the agency has held for the time being. 415 reduce operating expenses and forego training and development, reduce number of audits that require travel. They'll be doing that more in-house and more of online type stuff and reducing out-of-town travel. And then 416 is reducing computer charges. They're going to delay upgrading some computer equipment until times are a little bit better. Under 4.2.3, again, reducing personal services by maintaining 1 vacancy there. There was a retirement, so we've just captured that savings. Under legislative services 432, that $40,000 is a pass-through contract to Georgia State that will allow them to do the research needed for Senate Bill 206 from last year, which basically tells us how much our tax exemptions are costing us as a state, and that's just a reporting function that they're going to be doing for us. Then under 4.4, 4.43, and 4.44, again, just realizing some savings from vacant positions and reduction in funds of operating expenses. Now, as we begin section 5 on page 9, dealing with the judiciary, I want you to understand that we held exempt judges and district attorneys and their salaries in any cuts or any proposed cuts in the different respective courts. Now, what we did capture were reductions in operating expenses that they were kind enough to help us with. And under 514, that's intended to reduce 2 floating administrative assistant positions in the Court of Appeals. On page 10, section 6, first line, $482,000 is reduction in operating expenses for judicial counsel. That is a 4%, and that again is to the administrative part of the courts. Now, 6.3.5, 3.6, 3.7, and 3.8, those are no new adjustments or adds. That's just spreading it over different programs that they had asked that they be spread through. It winds up that total still winds up being the same, so there's a no add, no cut there in our proposal. Under 6.42, the Judicial Qualifications Commission, you'll see we made a little bit of a change there, $15,000 reduction. They have 3 cases that they want to try to prosecute before the end of the year, plus about $57,000 in outstanding bills that they need to get paid. So we've allowed that and $35,000 to try those 3 cases. So that's what that's dealing with. On page 11, section 7, 713, we're just eliminating 1 vacant administrative assistant position. Page 12, under prosecuting attorneys, under counsel superior court clerks, reducing operating expenses for a 4% reduction there. Under DAs, on page 12, continued, 822, eliminating the state-funded victim advocate positions. Out of the 48 or 49 judicial circuits across the state, only 16 of those actually had state-funded positions for victim advocates. However, there are still victim advocates under the Prosecuting Attorneys Council that we've left alone and not cut there. And speaking of the PAC, there's a 4% reduction for them. Now, on superior courts, you'll see 2 reductions at 9.14 and 9.32. Those are not necessarily permanent cuts, but they've held those open for us to allow us to capture those funds for the remainder of the year. And then 933, they've changed around their travel patterns, holding their conferences in Athens to help save money and just traveling less, so we picked up those savings. And then on 934, reduction in fringe benefits to reflect judge vacancies in July and August. The two judgeships that were in the Griffin circuit were sworn in by the governor after the fiscal year had started. We did not take any additional cuts to the Supreme Court, and that ends the judicial and legislative activities where the governor couldn't actually recommend cuts. We had to recommend those due to the separation of powers. Now on page 16, under DOAS, on page 12, you'll see a swap right there of the funds, and that's kind of a paperwork, what I would call a paperwork change. It was done, and those transactions are linked, and they're endorsed by the governor and OPB, making those corrections there. Under 12.1, the payments to Georgia Aviation Authority, you'll notice a $1.2 million cut there. They're sitting on approximately $2 million in cash, and what they were planning on doing is purchasing a couple more aircraft, and what we've asked to do is take that 1.2 in cash to use to fill some of the holes we've got, and then if they need the aircraft, we're suggesting they come back in probably 2012 or 2013 and ask for those purchases to be bonded instead of using cash. The remainder of the cash will be used for some hangar maintenance and some aircraft maintenance that has to be done out of cash, cannot be done out of bonds, so that's why the $800,000 will be remaining there. Page 19, under section 14, banking and finance, just a savings capture right there from a position being vacated due to a retirement. Under Department of Community Affairs on page 23, under section 16, I want to call your attention to 4 different items: 1623, 1643, 1662, 1610.2. Under 1610.2, you'll see a reduction of 91,738 recommended by the governor. We spread those cuts at the request of the agency across the 4 programs. Those cuts still total the 91,738, but it just allows them to take those cuts across those agencies instead of out of one particular spot. Under 1614.1, the payments to the One Georgia Authority, the governor recommended about $19.8 million there in cash. We have reduced that by $9.8 million and using it to help with the deemed hospitals or the DSH hospitals, disproportionate share hospitals. We felt like that the number one key to economic development in a lot of communities is making sure the hospital's still up and operating, because once they lose that hospital, that is a great deterrent to businesses looking to come into the community. So we felt like preventative care in a different way, budget-wise, is probably a better economic development use than what may be proposed otherwise. Now on page 26, under Department of Community Health, on 1735, age, blind, and disabled Medicaid, that savings there is from the disease management contracts that were terminated because they were underperforming contracts, and that relates to an 8-month savings for an additional $1.5 million cut. The 1743, the change there, additional $800,000, is done from the pharmaceutical companies' settlements on error and fraud charges, so we're able to pick up an additional $800,000 there. On page 27, under healthcare access and improvement, reduced funds for St. Joseph's Mercy Care contract on 1774. All of those contracts have submitted a 4% reduction with the exception of this one, so we've just went back in and took a 4% reduction there. And then under healthcare facility regulation, that is just a savings that will be accrued through the high turnover rate of those individuals working in that agency there. Now, on page 28, 17.1 Indigent Care Trust Fund. That again comes back to the DSH money. We talked about disproportionate share hospitals. That's where some of the One Georgia money was used. Just to give you an idea, that $13 million that we've put in there will be leveraged by these private hospitals to pull down about an additional $40 million in federal money to allow them to keep their doors open. On 1711.6 and 1712.4, the cut there was in the wrong place, and all we've done is swap places with that. But we did add back $250,000 for hemophilia patients to be able to have, if they have any emergencies, need factor for those patients at any point in time. Then low-income Medicaid under 1715.8 on page 29, you'll see a $100,000 additional cut, and that again is some estimated savings from drug company settlements also. Under 17.17.2, you'll notice that we have added back $2.4 million. Representative Parrish and his subcommittee felt very strongly, since that money goes directly to every county in the state for grant and aid for health departments, public health departments in those counties, that money right there was something that touches every Georgian, or has the potential to touch every Georgian, so it was added back. Now on page 30, under State Health Benefit Plan, you'll see where we've recognized the $56 million and the savings we accumulated by spreading that throughout the document. And just to let you know that, again, we felt like that it was very important that we put money back into the retirement fund also. We've got a refinance coming up, potentially of some bonds in the next month or so, and one of the outstanding obligations that Susan was reminding us of was a $5 million obligation that we had to go back to 1997 through 2000 or 2001 of some underfunded contributions at that time. That hangs out there like a red flag when they refinance, because it has to be disclosed in the document. So we're trying to cover that and make sure that is fully funded and taken care of, so it doesn't show up as a flag. Now on section 18, page 32, you'll see an additional $300,000 reduction on 18.34, and that was asked for by OPB as later information had come available. And then on page 35, under Department of Defense, Military Readiness, we did a $230,000 add there to help with the utility expenses at National Guard armories. And again, OPB had asked us to help out in some changing around there that they had asked for. And then on page 36, Department of Driver Services, 20.2.7, a reduction in operating expenses there of $107,000, and that helps balance out some telecommunications and workman's comp issues there. Page 38, Department of Economic Development, on 22.13 and 22.73, Chairman Rogers and his committee squeezed out an additional savings right there of $52,675 on both of those lines, and so we're just able to bank that to use in other places. Page 40, Department of Education, Agricultural Education, 23.12, an add of $28,000 for some emergency equipment needs at Camp John Hope before the summer camping season begins there. On page 40 also, 23.51, the governor recommended eliminating the Galileo contract. I'm sure many of you have gotten emails from constituents and teachers and folks back home stressing the need and the importance of the Galileo contract. Chairman Dixon has recommended putting that back in. His committee has recommended putting that back in. On page 41, on 23.91, Georgia Youth Science Technology Centers, that $12,000 add back just allows them to continue in business, and they use that money, and I couldn't tell you what their match is. It's probably north of 10-to-1. For every dollar we put in, they're able to raise about another $10 for use. And about half the high schools and school systems in the state right now are using GYSTC to help with science instruction and training teachers on science instruction. 23.13.2, right there was a cut the governor had recommended to residential treatment centers Folks, these are the wards of the state. These children that are in these facilities, they're the wards of the state. We're basically, between them and state schools, we are their Board of Education, and we're responsible for making sure they're fully funded. So, again, Chairman Dixon and his committee did great work in adding that line back. Then on page 42, line 2317.1 and 17.2, those are two corrections on some errors that were made in figuring some tax digests and first one thing and another. So we're just doing some corrections there. Under QBE on 2319.1, you'll see the differentiated pay I'd mentioned earlier for math and science teachers. The slight adjustment there is where we've trued up the numbers just a little bit. And on 2319.3, the midterm adjustment, again, that little bit of a change is from truing up numbers to actual numbers. Instead of rounding, we're using actual numbers there. On page 42 continued, there's 2319.4, you'll see a $1.2 million ad for the training and experience on the new charter commission schools that are opening in the 2010 and 2011 school year. They do not have a local taxing authority, so again, it falls back on us as the state to help make up that T&E there, so that's what that ad is. And then you'll look at, on page 43, state interagency transfers, 2324.1, $426,000 additional cut over what the governor had asked for, and that's based on actual use on that testing. 2324.2 again goes back to that 56 million number originally talked about that was spread throughout the document on SHBP. And then 2325.2, dealing with state schools. Again, we are their school board. We're the only source of funds they have is those that we appropriate for them, and that is to take care of some physical fitness activities that Georgia School for the Deaf is doing up in Cave Springs. Now on to page 45, Georgia Forestry Commission. There has been a recommendation to eliminate 4 positions of frontline personnel. Chairman Rogers felt it was important that we put those 4 positions back in place and make sure they're there. Under 2536, you'll notice $72,540 there. That is a prime example of an unfunded mandate from the federal government. As the federal government has gone through and changed bandwidths on broadcast channels, on digital conversion of equipment, they have made us repurchase different or new equipment, and now what we're having to do is go back and purchase licenses for all that new equipment. So kind of one of those things, I guess, unintended consequences or a federal mandate. I don't know which one you want to call it. Page 48, 2610.5. We're picking up $2,200 there in additional savings from the closing of one office and moving it here to Atlanta. Just picking up that little bit of service. Now on page 50 in Department of Human Services, you'll see a little bit of a change there, and that change is also connected to line 2721.2. This was done at the request of the agency to true up some things, and we're actually revising the expenditure projections there. On 2711.2 and 3, we've replaced, Chairman Houston felt it was important to replace the last quarter funding there, so that's what those numbers are, is the last quarter of funding to keep those programs still in business, dealing with Alzheimer's respite and the Centers for Visually Impaired. On page 53, on 2721.2, realign TANF funds based on prior year expenditures and revised expenditures. That is basically in other funds and not state funds. Page 56, GBI, under 2913, you'll see an adjustment in telecommunications expenses. That cut that was originally made was a little bit deeper than what was needed, or considerably deeper than what was needed. You'll see we've put back $1.6 million. OPB had asked for that adjustment to be made because they're trying to keep from the GBI agent and scientist positions from being held open and unfilled and creating backlogs. On page 59, under section 30, line 30.5.3, the closing of 2 RYDCs, and they were scheduled for closure on July 1. We backed that date up to April 1st to catch an additional savings there. Page 61, section 31, line 3182. There was a recommended reduction of personal services. However, that would have actually taken safety inspectors off the road and out of the field. For each one of these safety inspectors, there's almost a 3-to-1 return on what we're paying them as to what they bring back in. They average about $172,000 a person is what they bring back in inspection fees. So if we'd made that cut, it would have had an effect on the bottom line for the state as a whole. On page 62, the Department of Law, you see a $205,000 ad there. That provides funds for 3 positions to eliminate the need for hiring as many special assistant attorney generals as we do sometimes, and basically allows us to take care of it through the attorney general instead of having to hire these positions that are billed on an hourly basis. So we're going to keep that in-house, and it becomes a lot more efficient. Page 63, under Department of Natural Resources, here's Historic Preservation, 3353. You'll see we've added back there. Most of that work was already done, and that $163,000 represents actual bills that are outstanding. So we've added that number back into the budget there. Page 64, on line 3373. We're reducing state funds by converting some full-time positions to either hourly or seasonal positions there. And then on 3311.4, the Ag Exposition Authority, that's Georgia National Fairgrounds, they have a little over $1 million in cash right now in the rainy day fund. We've taken about $500,000 of that and leaving them still with over $500,000 there in case they have a rainy day during the fair. Is Randy Moore that operates the fairgrounds down there, when he called in a panic with that, I told him I fully understand. I'd been a chairman of a fair for 10 years, so I knew what rainy days meant. That meant the bills still come, but the people don't. So we understand fully what they're talking about there. On page 68, State Properties Commission, 3621, you'll see a $500,000 cut there. And this deals with Capitol Police and will actually have no effect at all on building security. And just want to make sure you understand and know that. But there was an audit done last year that we've received that showed that they lapsed $414,000 in cash and went back to GBA. That money that GBA receives in rent doesn't actually come back to the general fund. They just hold it. And so the Capitol Police is fully funded out of GBA, but with the savings, there's no need for that savings to sit there when we could use that money in education and other areas. So you'll see that occur twice here in just a minute, and I'll show you another one. On page 70, you'll see there's going to be several of these that are linked. 3813, 3834, 3844, 3874, and 3884 were all moved to a reduction at line 3854 at the agency's request. And that's where they could use it best, and where they'd ask for it to be done to. Now, still on page 70 at 3821, you'll see the Capitol Police Services again. Again, going back to that audit and looking at current numbers, they're looking like that they're going to be saving considerably even more than that this coming year. So we took that $500,000 there, and you'll understand that it's basically a truing up of accounting right there, what we've done, but it is a cut. On 3857, adjusting funding for increased fuel costs for State Patrol, $215,000 to get them through the last several months of the year. Just a tidbit of information, the Colonel had said that, I think the other day in the hearings, that currently troopers are limited to 85 miles per day per car, right now because of the gas fund shortage. And understand that when you go from $1.95 to $2.10, $2.30 in gasoline to $3 in gasoline, it has a huge impact on these guys. So we want to make sure they've got enough gas money to be able to still respond out within the state. Page 73, under PSC 3936 is a reduction for the a business analyst position that resigned effective January 31st. And then 3937, Chairman Rogers and his subcommittee felt that there could be an additional reduction and have some administrative efficiencies of $340,000 there. Now on section 40, page 74, under Ag Experiment Stations 40.2.2, Chairman Earhart reduced that cut by $300,000. Those cuts are just going to have to be made through the attrition and leaving vacant of positions. The College of Ag is actually the fastest growing unit within the University of Georgia as far as students are concerned. And what the concern there is that they're no longer going to be able to accept more or new students. So we've got to make some adjustments there. On page 75, under Regent Central Office, $44,459 add back for SREB, and that basically is because we do not have an optometry school here in the state, and this goes to allow us to send students to another state, and that's just a small minor contract that seems like for whatever reason comes back year after year. On page 76, line 40.2 or 40.22.6, the COO position, officer position, will be open effective April 1st, so we've captured that savings of $45,769. Under section 41 on page 78, under 4154, we're reducing the state funds and recognizing federal funds there from the odometer fraud grant of $48,000. On page 79, 41.7.1. Again, this is where some of the SHBP, but ERS money, the additional $5 million that we were needing to put into the employee retirement system, that's where it's parked at. And again, that helps protect our AAA bond rating. On tax compliance, on 41.10.4 and 41.11.2, they're tied together over the two programs, but we've spread them a little bit, divided up the main cut and spread it over two programs there, just to help ease the cuts on one particular program. Now on page 81, 4216, you'll see the add there of $44,162. There is a built-in escalation clause into the lease payment for the archives building down at Clayton State. And over the last 3 or 4 years, for whatever reason, the Secretary of State's office has not received that additional escalation for that lease in the budget, and it's had to come directly out of their operating expenses. So we've added that back in there. Under 4232 on elections, you'll see $101,552. That money comes from the original Help America Vote Act, which was where we bought the voting machines originally, and you'll see that small expenditure pulls down over $2 million. So we've recognized that and put that in there. Page 82 on professional licensing boards, on 4255 dealing with the pharmacy board. Originally, they had recommended doing away with the wet formulary test and part of the written portion of the pharmacy test, but decided that that is not a good idea after all. So there's a $24,000 add back. On 4264, we're just realizing the an additional quarter-year savings there that they had not recognized in that cut. Now on page 86. Line 4431, an adjustment of $70,000 for the engineering scholarships to project the projected, or to cover the projected need, and that is directly linked to, on page 87, line 4410.1, which is the Hope Scholarship. that's just coming out of lottery funds, so we had to move it up there, and you'll see that slight reduction on Hope there. Now to page 90, section 47, 4714, $150,000 add there. That is our 2.5 match to a local 2.5% match that will help draw down $5.7 million in federal funds for local airports and improvements to those. That's stuff that happens. Again, economic development all across this state is directly linked to airports and availability. On page 95, under the bond section, 50.11, that is some money that we can prepay a little bit of debt with, $290,000 there. And then on 50.13, 14, 15, 16, and 17, those are bonds that are being offered for deauthorization in the 2012 budget. But since they're going to be deauthorized, we're able to capture savings in 2012 and 2011. So we went back and made that adjustment there to pick up those funds. And that, folks, ends the changes within your document. And Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any questions that I might be able to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair recognizes Representative Rogers. You didn't have one? Okay. P. Ways, are there? Chairman Purcell.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, ma'am.
On page 59 with the Juvenile Justice Department, we're closing 2 of our 30-bed RDCs facilities, and we've moved back the time to April the 1st. Do we know which of those 2 RDCs are going to be closed in the state?
Not yet. Do not know yet.
When will that information be available?
I am not sure. We've been asking that question now for a couple of weeks, but we're still not sure.
Well, I understand.
It'll need to be pretty quick, though,
because
right. time is of the essence on that one.
Okay. Thanks.
Representative Murphy. Is your light on? Wave. Representative Abrams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On page 41, lines 2314 and 2315, can you please describe the impact of these cuts to nutrition and preschool handicapped?
On page
41, lines 23.14.1 and 23.15.1. Those seem to be fairly significant cuts.
Okay, those are not changes made by us. That was recommended by the governor. And you said that's nutrition and?
It's the nutrition program, and it's also preschool handicapped.
The nutrition program, we're still meeting our maintenance of effort there. It will have some slight impact on local systems, but not a significant impact, because the state portion of nutrition money is very, very, very small compared to what the federal portion is. I mean, a very actually insignificant amount when you look at the total picture. Now, on the preschool handicapped, I'm going to ask Christine. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a 4% reduction submitted by the agency that they've been planning on all year. So they're already expecting that.
So.
Mr. Chairman, going back to the juvenile justice, I know we have a new commissioner over there. I just wanted to ask two questions, if I could, about the closures moving up to April. Number one, will we really see that savings because there's leave payout that'll go into this fiscal year that has to go with that? And number two, with the closures accelerated, is the commissioner completely comfortable that we'll maintain our memorandum of understanding that we have with the Justice Department that we worked so long and hard for?
My understanding is the MOE will be maintained. We don't have to worry about that. And I'll defer to the chair of the subcommittee on the where's Representative Powell on the other question there, the other piece of the question. Chuck, would you mind restating the other piece?
Yeah, the question was, I know we're moving the closures up to April, so they'll do that. But given the maintenance payout, are they going to be able to show
Realize
the savings. I understand we have them in the budget, but many cases there's maintenance payouts that go with if there's any separations of service. I was just wondering if they had money to address that, Mr. Chairman.
That's calculated in the savings.
Chairman.
So at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay.
Recognize that in a moment. Representative Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have hopefully a simple question, and maybe I'm missing something here, but page 68, we have taken the $500,000 on line 36.2.1. When you look at the state funds and total funds, I see that $500,000 reduced on state funds. The federal funds, that has no impact on, the total funds, that has no impact on total funds when we reduce that $500,000, or is there error in the state funds and total funds lines on that page?
Right. We're taking the state money and then backfilling it with the savings from the Capitol Police in this coming year.
So when we look at state funds and total funds in the governor's recommendation of $3 million and $3,080,000, when we take that $500,000 out, state funds reduces to $2.5 million, but total funds remains $3 million.
Right, because it's a backfill. That money is totally coming from building rent over all the state agency buildings. So what they'll be doing is capturing back that.
Thank you.
All right.
Representative Mills. Representative Mills. Oh, okay.
His budget's laying on his button back there.
Got a lot of. Are there any other questions? Any other questions? Chair recognizes Ms. Smith for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to pass on House Bill 77.
It'd be by committee substitute.
By committee substitute.
Second. Okay, there will be a roll call vote. Any more discussion? Representative Chairman England.
Yay.
Collins, yes. Chairman Parrish.
Yes.
Chairman Dixon.
Yes.
Chairman Hill. Yes. Chairman Houston.
Yes.
Chairman Powell.
Yes.
Chairman Rogers.
Yes.
Chairman Reinders. Representative Chanel.
Yes.
Representative Knight.
Yes.
Representative O'Neill. Leader O'Neill.
Yes.
Representative Sims. Representative Chuck Sims. Minority Leader Abrams. Representative Ash.
Yes.
Representative Burns.
Yes.
Representative Chokas.
Yes.
Representative Dollar.
Yes.
Representative Allison.
Yes.
Representative Austin.
Yes.
Representative Carter.
Yes.
Representative Coleman.
Yes.
Representative Von Epps.
Yes.
Representative Amerson.
Yes.
Representative Baker.
Yes.
Representative Casas. Representative Davis.
Yes.
Representative Gardner.
Yes.
Representative Golick. Representative Hurd.
Yes.
Representative Huckabee.
Yes.
Representative Jones. Speaker Pro Tem. Whip.
Yes.
Representative Martin.
Yes.
Representative Mills.
Yes.
Representative Neal.
Yes.
Representative Peake.
Yes.
Representative Purcell.
Yes.
Representative Roberts.
Yes.
Representative Sims.
Yes.
Representative Smith. Tommy. Representative Stevens.
Yes.
Representative Willard.
Yes.
Representative Green.
Yes.
Representative Hembry. Representative Hughley.
No.
Representative Jones.
Yes.
Representative Lucas. Representative Maxwell.
Yes.
Representative Morris.
Yes.
Representative Oliver. Representative Powell.
Yes.
Representative Ramsey. Representative Setzler. Representative Kip Smith.
Yes.
Representative Richard Smith.
Yes.
Representative Walker.
Yes.
Representative Williams.
Yes.
Representative Mark Hamilton.
Yes.
Representative Henson. Representative James. Representative Kaiser.
Yes.
Representative Manning.
Yes.
Representative McKillop.
Yes.
Representative Murphy.
Yes.
Representative Parsons. Representative Parsons. Representative Pruitt.
Yes.
Representative Rice. Representative Sheldon.
Yes.
Representative Smith. Lynn.
Yes.
Representative Smyrie. Representative Weldon.
Yes.
Representative Yates.
Yes.
Are there any members who did not have a chance to vote or name was not called out? Here's the list I had. Representative Bearden?
Yes.
Tanner?
Black.
Black? I apologize. Representative Hanner, I'm not going to say a word, sir. Yes. Yes, thank you. I found my complete, it was a compliment to both. Best I can do this morning. Are there others? Are there others? No others count? Measure 60 yeas, 2 noes. Measure passes. And will be sent on to rules. Are there any other business to be brought before the committee? Move for adjourn. All adjourned.